an original.
From Story Studio Network.
I'm Tom Hoppe, and I'm your host of the Most Painful Podcast. On our last show, we spoke to Daniel Crumbach, who talked to us about the best way to reduce re-injury rates after you've had an injury. Lots of great information on that show that could help you navigate through an injury and stay active. If you missed that episode, you can listen to it on our Spotify and Apple feed and receive notifications for the most up-to-date episodes. So subscribe to the show and you'll be kept up to date on what's coming out. So chronic pain can be a lonely journey, and people may suffer in silence thinking no one understands their pain. This can also have an impact on family. Today I'm joined by Dr. Dinna Icatar, concussion management specialist and chiropractor at Health Max Physio in Toronto, to discuss how to navigate chronic pain as a family and what are some of the support strategies for caregivers and loved ones. Dinna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you so much for welcoming me.
So maybe we could just start off a little bit about what you do and how this is important. I mean, we know it's important for families to be involved, but where do we start with family support and what are the strategies available?
You know, as a chiropractor, I see a lot of patients who are injured every day. So most chronic pain patients, they always start with like some type of acute injuries, but the reverse isn't always true. Not everyone with an injury is going to develop chronic pain. So that development from an injury or an onset of some sort to chronic pain, it is tough to navigate, like you mentioned, Tom. And not only difficult for my patients or the person involved, but for the people around them. So the first thing, of course, is, just try to learn as much as you can about what's happening, the actual injury or onset, the structural or like the defined science of what's going on. Try to get some understanding of that. But what I've learned over the years is no matter what you know about the actual science or the actual facts of what happened, what makes it difficult for each person is the story or the context for them. Not everyone's family is the same. Unfortunately, not everyone has support. And for those who have support, maybe the support is not the best support. Maybe it's a confused support. Maybe it's overwhelming support, whether it's a good, overwhelming, or bad support. So that support system that you mentioned, to me, over the years, I've learned that it's really important to involve a core set of people so that my patients can figure out, even though with chronic pain, what they can do, but also to make sure that the caregivers themselves, they feel accomplished in what they're doing for that person as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we hear that a lot. We've talked about it on the podcast quite a bit, is education is the key, understanding chronic pain, understanding how it impacts a person. But sometimes I think, we find, is that the patient may start to learn that, but the family doesn't, so they may not understand what's going on. Are you seeing that as well?
Well, I always encourage the persons to come in with the patient in the beginning. Involve yourself in some way with the healthcare practitioner or the person who seems to have a kernel of knowledge. First of all, it's just tough to find someone who you can talk with. So, when the person going through chronic pain has someone to talk with, or when the caregiver finds someone that they can talk and have a conversation with, always a great idea for everyone to have the conversation together, right? Just like how you and I are having right now. It's nice to have that exchange of ideas. Let's make sure that we're kind of seeing the same picture. So try to find a healthcare practitioner that can kind of lead you in the right direction, and certainly lead you away from the wrong directions, right? There's so much misinformation there too.
So what would be, you say wrong direction. So what could be an example of that, just so people may understand? Because, a lot of people are new to this. So what's right or what's wrong? What does that mean? With information, I
think it's good for information to be supported or validated in some way, somehow. There's a lot of great support groups out there, but sometimes the information is not validated in the best way. And so that's what I mean, right? So try to involve a group or a healthcare practitioner that has that kind of validation or evidence that supports it. Evidence might change over time, but at least there's something there to support. That way you can be knowledgeable and informed about whatever decisions or supports you offer, right? That's primarily always my concern. Like, where did you hear it? How do you know? Was it a one-off? If it doesn't pass the sniff test, like if it sounds outrageous, maybe it is outrageous, that type of thing. But when people are in pain, sometimes they don't care. And for the people who are supporting them, there's a certain amount of stress on the people who are supporting them to provide any way to help them. And so if it doesn't pass their sniff test, maybe it's not worth their time and effort either, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the reasons why we started this podcast. And there's a lot of other good evidence-based podcasts that are out there as well, because sometimes people don't have the resources to find research or understand where to look for research. So sometimes it's better just to maybe have a short burst of evidence-based information and then you go from there. Where you are in your clinic, are you providing that type of information for people when they're coming in and looking for chronic pain, support for chronic pain, I should say?
Yeah, I mean, I came about it sort of naturally or organically, like a lot of people who have this kind of special interest. Unfortunately, it was because I myself went through an incident and I was diagnosed with chronic pain and I didn't know how to manage that very well. As a practitioner, I was in complete denial. If it wasn't for the support of my family and the practitioners who knew what they were doing, I honestly thought that my career would have been over a number of years ago, but obviously this wasn't the case. What helped me a lot was, like I said, trusting in the healthcare practitioners around me, trusting in my family to listen to the healthcare practitioners. That wasn't always easy. And having them constantly be willing to have conversations with me and say, hey, let's think about this. Let's try what's doable for you right now. Let's try something doable. Okay, you did it. Let's try something else. All right. And then when I have a setback, just realize, you know what? You did it before. We just got to try it again and again and again until you make that little bit of progress. Without their support, I wouldn't have the career as a chiropractor. So I take this into account when I talk with patients and their families. When they come in, I try to be mindful of what's contributing to their chronic pain. Obviously, as a chiropractor, I see a lot of issues related to musculoskeletal, so obvious injuries. Probably the most common problem is like failed surgeries, like quote unquote failed surgeries, and that have left people with disabilities. That said, we also deal with patients who are chronic pain because they have diabetes, uncontrolled diabetes, so they need that help. Cancer patients are coming in for rehab and things such as cancer. So on my end, I try to keep a running list of organizations that they can connect with. I'm fortunate I'm in the GTA, Greater Toronto area. So there are a ton of great resources that patients can access or families can access. A lot of great community centers, for instance, offer programs to patients. Nothing too threatening, but something just to keep them connected with the community, provide them with great information. Maybe it could be as simple as having like a potluck once a week or, participating in an aqua therapy program or doing crafts or circling back to diabetes. There's a lot of great diabetes workshops. So keeping both the family and practitioners involved and the patients involved with that. I also try to reach out to the community. Last month, I went out to the Scarborough community and Eastern community, just going back, literally driving into the community centers and just saying, hey, what's going on? Taking a look at their bulletin boards, seeing what's available. So then I can take that information back to my clinic and share it with my colleagues and patients. So I take that interest because I know how valuable that can be. And I just want patients to know and caregivers to know that you're not alone in this. And there's support out there. So both the caregiver can have respite and the patients can not just lean on their immediate caregiving circle.
Yeah, and I think you come from a unique position where you've been through it yourself. So you're able to provide that perspective to people who are struggling with chronic pain. But for the caregivers, and how do you build that communication? Because sometimes patients will struggle in silence or don't want to bother other family members with their problems. So how, as a clinician, how are you breaching that kind of gap?
I'm that fortunate person that I just love having conversations with someone. So with caregivers, saying hello and goodbye and paying attention to like their facial features. Do they look rested? Do they not look rested? Are they having a better day or a worse day? And just commenting on that. And then just taking the conversation from there. Caregivers have a lot of stress and they're not sure how best to help that person. Maybe they're helping coordinate a patient's appointments and they need some help with that. And it comes up in conversations, just willing to touch base with them and say, hey, that's great. You brought so-and-so in or you're here with so-and-so, but how are you doing? Right? What are you doing for yourself? Are you doing any arts and crafts? How's your music going? How did your coffee with your friend go? Oh, I haven't heard you mention so-and-so in a while. What's going on? Just having someone touch base with them can mean so much to these caregivers. And then from there, just leading it from there. If they mention, oh, I'm having a tough time with the appointments. In my clinic, we have a lot of patients who suffer from catastrophic injuries, and they might have a caseworker or an occupational therapist working with them and say, hey, have you reached out to the occupational therapist or the rehab support worker? I don't think this should all be on you. I think they should be helping you with this. I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot about so-and-so. I should reach out to them and let them help me coordinate the appointments and things like that. So from a chronic pain perspective in my clinic, we're fortunate that we have multiple healthcare providers or multiple people involved in that person's care. We're supposed to have a role, and we all do our role, but maybe it's good to remind people of what those roles are, and that's what these little conversations are. So even though I'm just a chiropractor, the conversations are so worthwhile to these patients because we can redirect them. And more specifically, like you said, to that support worker, helping them with appointments, making sure that the patient has their rehab support worker coming through or their PSW coming through so that caregiver can have the respite that they need. Respite care, I think, is a little undervalued. So I try my very best to make sure that caregivers are aware that they can have this time to their self, and that time to the self is actually quite valuable to themselves and to the person they're trying to help.
Yeah, and I mean, that's key is communication. So as a clinician, clinicians are very busy. You have a huge patient load. You put in lots of hours. How do you manage that balance between, trying to stay on schedule and also having those conversations that may take longer than the appointment time? I mean, this might also be helpful for other clinicians who are listening to this.
Yeah. I think other clinicians and maybe yourself will appreciate, like, when I figure that out, that would be the magical day for me. What I can say is I do my very best to be present with whichever patient I'm with. So whether it's a 10-minute visit or a 30-minute visit, if I'm with this patient, then if I'm with Tom, I'm with Tom. And that presence of mine, I think it allows that information to soak into my brain so that the next time I see you, Tom, I have that capacity because I was so present with you the last time. It's like I just saw you yesterday. And I could say, how was that coffee date that you mentioned to me? Or, that's great that you're here, but you mentioned your mom who brought you. Your mom went away. Is she back now? Did she enjoy her time away? Being present is so key. That's probably what I try to encourage all my colleagues and clinicians to be. If you find that you're not present with your patient or with whoever you're with, that's the first thing that I always try to address. And when I'm successful in that, things just kind of fall from that. Because you're right, schedules are demanding. And my desire to help patients is not demanding, but it's quite, I feel that quite keenly. But being present and making lots of notes is super important. I document quite extensively. And like I said, we operate in a team format, so everybody has a role. After that patient leaves, I try my very best to make sure that whatever conversation I have, I relate that back to whichever practitioner needs to do it. So it's not always on me. I just have to be present so then I know how best I can help someone.
Yeah, because that's the other thing when we talk about families and strategies is also just the different clinicians that are involved in a patient's life. And, if they don't have, I guess, if they're not able to go to an interdisciplinary clinic where everything's under one roof, it makes it a challenge running around. So as a clinician, how do you manage that when you have patients going from using different services and then they're coming to you with questions and answers, or questions looking for answers, sorry, I should say?
I actually learned this tip from one of my patients. A lot of people will carry a list of medications in their wallet or on their phone. What this person did, they had what they call a hit list of people that they can call, or that's needed in this case, it was a brother in their brother's care. So they had this hit list of people. They had a medication list and a hit list of people. Ever since I saw that, I thought that was brilliant, and I share this with people because you're right, Tom. There's so many people that can be involved sometimes, and you don't know who they are, and maybe you forget how to contact them. But if you have the 3 or 4 people that you can touch base on, and those 3 or 4 people, hopefully, when you talk with them, they're present, like I suggested. And even though they're not the best ones for whatever reason you're going to them, maybe they can direct the caregiver to the right person, right? But when you have, it depends how you call it, your circle of counselors, or, people have different phrases for it. This particular patient called it a hit list, which is why it always stuck in my head. But when you have those 2, 3, or 4 people that you can go to and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or hey, I'm noticing this, what do you suggest? I would hope that whoever they talk to has the presence of mind to listen and acknowledge when maybe I'm the best person, or maybe, hey, don't forget about so-and-so and reach out to the next person.
Yeah, and I think I like that idea. That's, something maybe for the audience as a takeaway is to have, things written down and who you're talking to, and notes when you visit them best you can. I mean, it's hard sometimes when you're struggling to do that. And what about, I guess for caregivers as well, be it family members or that, is there a method, or do you have any ideas on how they can communicate, because there's privacy and all that as well too, how they can communicate with clinicians on behalf of the patient, if they're involved with that person and helping?
Like you said, that's a line that we, as a healthcare practitioner, I'm very aware of. With respect to a patient, if they come in asking specifically about a patient's care, I always have to check on the file if, what information I can share and whatnot, specifically to that patient's condition. But that's a little bit different than, say, someone coming in saying, I'm just having a tough time coping with something. Maybe they're saying, I haven't been eating as well. Or, I'm a little low on energy because I got so much going on. As a chiropractor, I'm able to turn to that person and say, hey, are you drinking enough water? Are you eating healthy? You mentioned you're tired. What's your supplementation like, right? So not necessarily about the patient, but really about the caregiver, right? Because I'm mindful that this is about how we can best support the caregiver. It's something like that. I don't believe with contravene or contradict or impede on anyone's privacy at all. But to remind someone, eat well, drink water. Did you go for a walk? How are you sleeping? I think that might help you. Right? Are you stressed? Oh, I'm sorry. What are you stressed about? You got a lot going on. Are you able to record things, write them down? That's different. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I'm very mindful of like what's a patient's injuries or conditions versus trying to address like the support workers concern.
Yeah, because that is, people sometimes struggle with that, and it leads to frustration and stress when they're trying to be helpful for someone that they're caring for. So it was just a question on that. So as we're getting close to the end here, like what would be kind of the top takeaways for families and the support strategies for caregivers?
So for families to support, try to get good information. I'm a big believer in trying to get good information like we talked about before. And good information can come from podcasts like this, or books or resources online. Of course, trusted healthcare practitioners as well. Develop that circle of confidences that can support you socially. Develop that circle of confidence that for the patient, so you know who to go to help that patient. And try to recognize when you need to take care of yourself. Like I mentioned, just taking care of yourself, like eating well, making sure your energy is good. If you're stressed, asking yourself, why am I stressed? Am I overburdened? Who I can reach out to? Things like that, I think can go a long way for caregivers. And it's something they probably have to remind themselves or touch base with themselves on a regular basis.
Yeah. So education, evidence-based education, which is hard with the internet world that we live in now and social media. It's a challenge. Mm-hmm. And then being open with your care providers and having that dialogue, and then also with your own family. And then, like you said too, I guess the hit list, as you call it, but having the names of your practitioners, if I understood that correctly, contacts, and then keeping your family in the loop on what's going on. Because I guess the big thing kind of popping in my mind is just being this lonely journey when you have chronic pain, and you don't want to bother anybody, you don't want to talk to anybody about it, and that's not a good way to go.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about like how caregivers, and I realized I talked about like how caregivers can reach out for help, but so much, of course, is just being kind to yourself also, like granting yourself permission to take care of yourself. So I alluded to nutrition, going for walks, taking that time for yourself, finding the resources and utilizing the resources that allow you to have respite care so you can have rest yourself. And when you give yourself that permission to access all of those and to take care of yourself, I think that can also go a long way for helping the caregivers themselves.
Put your oxygen mask on first. Look after yourself first.
Yes, 100%. That's it, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think those are very good points because, I mean, it is a lonely journey. And I guess the other part of it too is wanting to work towards, I guess, getting out of the cycle of, if you possibly can, getting out of the cycle of always going to clinicians, but getting to the cycle of being on your, to a place where you can start enjoying quality of life.
Yeah, I think that's like, for me as a clinician, that's like the ultimate goal, right? To promote independence in some way. But independence doesn't mean that you don't need help. So it's kind of, if you think about it too much, it can be confusing when I'm saying, hey, you need to be more independent and yet you need to ask for help. And I think that's where the struggle really lies. But that's a totally different topic for sure. But recognizing, you're going to do great. You're going to do good most times. But when you definitely feel that stress of being a caregiver or the loneliness of feeling a caregiver, to also know that that's completely normal, unfortunately, right? The ups and downs, and just go back to the things that helped you before and realize that the up times are coming again. And maybe ask for help or just realize you just need the respite care. But you're absolutely right.
No, and I think that's important. And like I said, the resources are out there. Canadian Pain Society on their website has a number of resources there, Pain over the Pain Portal. Some of the provinces, Alberta, BC, have associations around chronic pain. So there's lots out there where people can go and get some evidence-based information.
100%.
Well, Dinna, thank you so much for being on the show. Great discussion, and I think it'll be helpful for families and caregivers.
I really hope so, Tom. Thank you so much for having me here.
Well, thank you. For feedback about the show or for more information on chronic pain, you can visit our website, veteranschronicpain.ca, or follow us on Facebook and X at Chronic Pain COE and on Instagram at Chronic Pain_COE. For our audience, stay safe and keep the hope alive.
The Most Painful Podcast
is produced for the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence by Story Studio Network.